Is your EA 888 equipped Audi B9 due for a belt and tensioner? I'm Rusty with FC Hero, and I'm here to show you how to do it yourself. On the table in front of me, we have a new belt from Continental, along with a tensioner and the one-time use hardware. These bolts that hold the tensioner in are aluminum, and they will be torqued with an additional angle. So we'll be replacing those in this DIY as well. If you're concerned if you need a belt, you can simply look down in your engine bay, looking at the sides of the belt, seeing if there's any fraying occurring. If you're having any oil leaks and it's starting to soak the belt, you could maybe see some oil starting to discolor the belt as well. Along the back of the belt, you may see some white starting to show through the belt. That is actually the cords of the inside of the belt starting to show through. And if that is the case, there's a good chance you need a tensioner as well. As the belt and tensioner begin to wear, a lot of debris can get caked up on here that can't be removed. And the tensioner itself actually can start to create some ribs. And there's also a bearing built into there. So there's a couple of ways in which they can fail. It is definitely good practice to replace the belt and tensioner at the same time, but not required. In regards to the tensioner, you can certainly have some bearing noises, some squealing, and certainly this bearing can lock up, which in turn can throw the belt off. You could have some alternator charging issues. Your AC might not work. In this vehicle, the water pump is actually on a separate drive, so you won't see any cooling issues. But if you do lose the belt or the tensioner locks up, you may end up stranded. So if you're replacing the belt, at least take a second to inspect and decide if you do need a tensioner at that time. Now, the vehicle that we're working on is a 2018 model, and it is a non-mild hybrid. In the later B9 versions, there is a mild hybrid in which the tensioner is entirely different. So when you enter your vehicle's information on the website, it should queue up the correct tensioner, and you'll have this style tensioner, which will have 2 rollers on it, or the original one, which we'll be installing in today's DIY. Now, there's not exactly a service interval for the tensioner, but about 6 years or 60,000 miles is definitely good practice for the rubber belt, as that will wear similar to your tires or any other rubber gaskets on the vehicle. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about some tools we're going to need to replace this belt and tensioner. As you can see by the table in front of me, not a lot of tools are going to be needed, and it's a super simple DIY. Definitely going to want to have a torque wrench that has a capability of doing angle as well. We have a double box end 16mm wrench. You can certainly get away with a long 3/8 ratchet and a 16mm socket. We've got a 1/4 ratchet along with a T45, a small extension in 1/4, and then we also have in the front a 4mm Allen, which I'll be using as a tensioner lock pin tool for the existing one in the vehicle. Definitely also going to be handy to have at least one good high-powered flashlight, and with that, let's go ahead and get into it. So once you've got the hood open and you verify that you don't have a mild hybrid, we'll be proceeding with this tensioner repair. So I've got a 16mm double box end wrench. You could certainly get away with a 3/8 ratchet with a longer handle, but this is actually the perfect size. I've also got a 4mm Allen I'm going to use for locking the tensioner in place. Hold the tensioner in place while we get this belt off. Just slide it off the tensioner and then off the alternator. You can see in the center here, we do have some white starting to show through, as I was discussing there earlier. No cracks or anything really. A little bit of fraying on the edges. And we don't have any oil leaks, so this wasn't too soaked, but it is starting to develop a little bit of a sheen, so it could start to squeal and squeak down the road. One thing for good practice, grab your new belt and double check to make sure that it is the exact and correct length, and also count the ribs in between. With the belt removed, we can go ahead and remove the tensioner. It does have 2 T45s. As I mentioned, they are aluminum, so we'll go ahead and get those out now, and we will be replacing those upon installation. Pull that tensioner up out on the driver's side, and away we go. Just like removal, going down below the alternator, we have, I'm going to put one bolt in there. The roll pin or the tensioner lock pin is going to be facing you, and the tensioner should be kind of going in that direction. You could probably install it this way, but it's not going to line up with the belt. So make sure the tensioner is going towards the center of the engine, and we'll get this down there. Get it into the bore of the tensioner. Make sure we line up ears. There we go. Once it lines up, it should sink into place. Get one of these screws in there, started on top to hold it in there while we grab the other screw. this one next. Run those in by hand, and then we'll grab our torque wrench and get ready to torque those to spec. So with that T45, we'll go ahead and torque these aluminum bolts to 8 Newton meters and then a 45-degree turn afterwards. We'll set it to 45 degrees. And with that all torqued to spec, let's go ahead and get our new belt installed. Just like the removal, we'll be putting it on the tensioner last. I do prefer to get this on the crank first, so I'm going to reach down, get it around the crank pulley, make sure it doesn't get caught on anything. You're going to kind of want to run your hand all the way around the crank. From there, I'll put it around the AC compressor, get it around the alternator, AC, make sure it's all the way on the crank. And if you're having any trouble getting it fitted now, chances are you're not all the way in the ribs. As you saw, right when that kind of sunk into the ribs, it allowed it to go around the tensioner. Now we can get that pin out and we're pretty much done. Go ahead, take your 16. Put a hand on the pin so you don't lose it. You don't have to go too far, just a little bit of pressure. And then as you release this, make sure the belt stays in track. As you're taking that tension off, there's a good chance that it could come out from under the tensioner, could come out from under the AC compressor, as well as the crank pulley, but everything looks like it's in good shape. And that pretty much wraps up today's DIY on the belt and tensioner on our Allroad Audi B9. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If so, don't forget to hit that like button. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop them down in the comments section below. And don't forget to subscribe because we'll have plenty more videos on this vehicle and many others like it. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.